Snow whispered across the land like a memory no one spoke of. It gathered on fence posts and buried wheel ruts, draped itself across the prairie like mourning cloth. The ranch had no path to it anymore, just the endless white hush, folding over the world like it was trying to start again. Colt Maddox moved through the storm shirtless, his breath fogging in slow, steady rhythm. Steam rose from his shoulders like smoke off a forge. He didn't flinch at the wind, didn't seem to feel the bite of it. His arms strained against a hay bale he dragged toward the barn, veins rising like rivers through hard country. A snowdrift swallowed his boots, but he kept going one quiet push at a time. No one came out this far anymore. He preferred it that way. The world had taken too much already. Words. People. His name, half spat and half forgotten in town. They called him the Beast in the Hills, or sometimes her son, like that explained why he lived alone with no fire in his chimney and no trail in the snow. A crow sat on the post and watched him. Colt stared back. The crow blinked first. He dumped the bale in the barn. The mule brayed in approval, only living soul who ever greeted him. Colt grunted, shut the doors, and started back toward the house, where the chimney smoked just enough to mean the stove hadn't gone cold. Then he stopped. It wasn't a sound that caught him. It was an absence. No wind. No crows. No crunch of hooves in snow. Just stillness, thick and unnatural. He turned. There, through the flurries, a shape. A wagon with one busted wheel. A single figure trudging beside it. Small. Leaning into the wind like it might carry her off. No coat, just a shawl flapping uselessly, heavy with snow. And behind her, two tiny cries. Faint. Ragged. Babies. Colt's body moved before thought did. He stomped forward, each step breaking through the crust like cracking old bones. The woman staggered once, then again. She reached the fence, clutched the post, then crumpled into the snow. He reached her as she hit the ground. Her face was raw, wind-burned and colorless. Dark hair stuck to her forehead in wet ropes. She was younger than he expected. 25, maybe. Hands scraped and bloodied. One twin bundled on her chest, the other in a rough-wrapped sling on her back, both wailing now in weak, shivering bursts. He knelt. Gently. Took the closest baby first. The child's eyes opened, blue and glassy. Lips chapped to near purple. He adjusted the blanket, wrapped his own body around both of them. Fire, the woman rasped. Please, just one. Then her eyes rolled back, and she dropped limp against the snow. Colt didn't speak. Didn't yell. Didn't panic. He just moved. He scooped her up, light as the sack of oats he carried every third morning. He took all three at once, a mess of limbs and cloth and cold, and carried them into the house. Inside, the stove glowed red with coals. He shoved two more logs in before even setting her down. Laid her carefully on the cot. Took off his thickest hide and wrapped it around the three of them. Checked the babies for frostbite. Their hands were stiff, but pink still clung to their cheeks. He held one close, cradling the heat from his chest into the child's tiny body. He didn't pray. Colt hadn't spoken to God since the ground refused to grow wheat over his mother's grave. But he watched. Waited. After a long time, the babies quieted. One whimpered in sleep. The woman stirred, lips parting. A word tried to form but didn't. Colt pulled the chair near the fire. Sat back. His bare chest heaved once, then fell still. Night deepened. The storm thickened, snow slapping against the windows like ghost hands. And Colt sat there, unmoving, watching the woman and the twins in the cot he hadn't used in years. They stayed. He stayed. Dawn tried to rise but found only white sky. The storm wasn't finished. Colt boiled water. Washed a tin pot. Mixed the last of the dry oats with milk. The woman hadn't woken. Her skin was flushed now, not from cold, but fever. She needed rest. The twins stirred. He hesitated, then dipped a spoonful of warm oats and held it to the older twin's mouth. The child blinked, stared up at him, then took it. The other followed. He fed them both in silence. The way he'd once fed calves too weak to stand. The sun never broke the clouds, but a pale brightness seeped through by afternoon. The woman woke. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked around like someone returning from deep water. Then froze as she saw him. You didn't leave us." Colt didn't answer. Her gaze drifted to the babies. They were clean, fed, swaddled in new cloth. She sat up too fast, winced. "I didn't mean to stay. Just the storm. I was gonna." "Don't talk," he said. His voice was deep and used, scraping like boot leather. She blinked, then nodded. Silence again. She reached for the babies. Held them close. Kissed their foreheads, eyes watering. "I'm Lena," she said finally. "Lena Whitlock." He didn't respond. "I know who you are," she added. Not unkindly. He raised an eyebrow. "You're the one whose mother burned the church steps." He said nothing. "You're the one folks said talks to ghosts." Still nothing. She tried again. "Thank you for letting us in." Colt stood. Tended the stove. Poured her a cup of water. Then, after a long pause, he said, "You shouldn't be here." Her face dropped. "It's not safe," he added, slower. "Not from me. Not from them." "I've been unsafe a long time," she said. "I can tell the difference now." The wind howled again. That night, she nursed the babies in his cot. He slept on the floor near the fire. Every so often, his eyes flickered open, just to be sure they were still breathing. They were. 3 days later, the storm had not let up. The sky remained a white sheet pressed against the world. The wind blew crueler, as if it resented the warmth inside that cabin. Lena tried to offer help. She cleaned the ash pan. She rocked the babies. She swept with a broken broom. Her fingers were red with cold, her sleeves torn. He handed her a pair of worn gloves. Said nothing when she tucked them on with quiet thanks. That night, the mule brayed strangely. Colt stepped out. Snow piled above his knees. In the distance, shapes moved. He watched. Waited. But the figures passed riders taking the ridge road toward Briar Fork. He went back in. Shut the door. Lena sat by the fire, the babies asleep beside her. She looked up at him. "You don't talk much, do you?" "No." She smiled a little. "Maybe that's good. Talk never helped me much." Colt sat down. He noticed, then, how her hair curled behind one ear. How she tucked it away when nervous. He hadn't noticed details like that in years. She didn't ask to stay another night. And he didn't tell her to go. They simply existed in the same space, warm against the storm, caught between silence and something beginning. And as the snow wrapped the world outside in cold forgetfulness, something in Colt Maddox thawed so quietly he didn't know it had begun. But the sound the snow made when you've been alone too long isn't silence. It's the sound of a second heartbeat near yours. And it stays with you. Even when the storm ends. The snow didn't stop. It thickened into something near permanent, skyless, sunless, unspoken. Morning had no color anymore, only a shift in the whiteness, a slow lightening of shadows that told you the day had returned. And still, Lena stayed. She tried to leave. By the third dawn, she had wrapped both babies in what remained of her shawl, bundled them into the wagon with stiff fingers, and began to dig out the wheels with the kitchen spoon. Colt watched her through the frost-smeared window. He didn't move. He knew what the storm would do to her out there. Knew it the way a man knows the weight of a plow or the depth of a grave. But she didn't look back. So he opened the door and stepped onto the porch, barefoot in the snow. She paused when she heard the hinge groan. Her breath came in bursts, the metal spoon shaking in her hand. I can't stay, she said without turning. It's not right. Colt said nothing. Just walked to the horseshoe and set the axe down. Then, slowly, he stepped back inside and left the door open. It took her an hour. But she followed. That night, she placed her hands flat on the table. The skin was torn near the knuckles, the cracks rimmed with blood, red against raw white. I can help with the barn, she offered. You can't even close your fists. I've done worse. He didn't argue. They worked side by side the next morning. She milked one cow while he chopped feed. The silence between them held weight, but not discomfort. Just the kind of silence people share when they've both known long winters and don't care to talk about them. The babies, bundled in a grain sack, slept on a stack of hay. The cows seemed to breathe slower with Lena in the barn, like even animals recognized someone born of hardship but not bitterness. Her hands bled through the gloves. She never said a word. He noticed when she limped. When her lips cracked and bled. When she flinched touching cold iron. Still, she called him sir every time she asked something. Sir, do you want me to feed the mule? Or sir, should I take the pail to the creek? He didn't like it. Didn't deserve it. But never corrected her. By the 5th day, the snow reached the porch rail. The wagon disappeared beneath the white. And for the first time, Colt lit the lantern in the front window, not for searchers, not for town, but for her. For the warmth it cast on her face as she rocked the twins. That night, Lena spoke more. They say in town you killed a man. He didn't look up from his fire stoking. They say a lot. Is it true? No. She nodded once. Thought so. She didn't ask who started the story. Didn't ask what happened instead. She just fed the babies, then sat beside the hearth and pressed her fingers against her temples. They buried my husband 2 winters ago, she said softly. Briar Fork didn't even ring the bell. Said he didn't earn it. Why? He was a preacher. But not one of theirs. No land. No name. Just faith. That's not enough around here. Colt watched the flames twist in the iron belly of the stove. I married him against my father's word, she continued. Pa said he'd disown me. I told him, fine. Then he died. Never saw me again. Never saw his grandbabies. She swallowed hard. I thought if I worked hard enough, maybe God would give me a place to belong again. Her voice cracked. Turns out, the only place they'll let a widow live in peace is the one where no one else wants to go. Colt stirred the coals. You found it. Lena laughed once, sharp, bitter. Is this peace? She whispered. With the wind trying to crawl through the walls and silence thick enough to choke on? He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a cup of hot water with boiled pine bark. Bitter, but it warmed the chest. Her fingers brushed his. Callus met crack. For the first time, she didn't flinch. In the dark corner, the twins gurgled in sleep. The storm howled but passed over them like a beast choosing not to strike. They sat long into the night, saying little. Letting silence do the work of trust. The next day, she cooked. It wasn't much, just corn mush and beans, but she did it without asking, stirring with the same slow rhythm he used to split logs. She moved like a woman who had learned to make a meal stretch, to soften hardship into routine. He ate everything. And didn't notice until the end that she hadn't eaten at all. Later, when she thought he was out with the mule, she stood by the hearth, facing the smoke, whispering names. Mabel. Ruthie. You be good now. Mama's got you. He stood in the doorway and didn't make a sound. The storm broke that afternoon, not completely, but enough to let in light. The clouds peeled back just enough to reveal the long gray curve of the hills beyond the fence. Lena stepped onto the porch holding one twin, the other strapped to her chest. She looked at the land like she might never get to see it again. He watched from the doorway. They're not yours to carry, she said suddenly, not turning. Whatever sins they put on you. You don't have to keep them. Colt crossed his arms. Don't see who else would. That's not noble. That's lonely. She turned to face him. Wind brushed her hair against her mouth. She didn't push it away. You saved us, sir, she said. Colt. What? My name. Don't call me sir. She gave the faintest nod. Thank you, Colt. That night, she sat beside him and stitched the holes in her gloves. Each stab of the needle came with a wince. He reached for her hand. Held it. She didn't pull away. The room was quiet except for the hiss of snow sliding off the roof. Outside, the world still judged. Still waited. But in that house, between firelight and snowfall, two wounded people stopped pretending they hadn't been broken. And didn't apologize for the pieces they offered. The storm lingered like a guest who wouldn't take the hint. Each morning, Colt opened the door and stared at the white thick, drifting, swallowing the horizon like a secret too big to speak. No tracks, no sky, no way out. Just snow and the silence it ruled with a hand colder than death. Inside, the fire never went out. Lena's hands stayed raw, and her eyes ringed with exhaustion, but she moved through each day like she'd lived in this cabin for years. She swept corners with the hem of her skirt. Rocked both babies at once with a foot on the cradle board and a spoon in hand. Whispered songs Colt didn't know, soft as snowfall, words half lost to time. The twins watched him now. They followed his movements, big hands lifting logs, boots stomping snow from the threshold, that deep voice saying nothing and yet filling the room. And one day, one of them crawled toward him. Ruthie, the bold one. Her little hands thudded against the floorboards, and Colt stilled, mid-motion with a ladle of stew. She reached him, sat on her knees, and raised both arms without a word. Lena looked up from the fire. Her mouth parted. Colt crouched. Slowly, like he might scare her. One calloused hand reached out, hovered, then settled under the child's ribs. She laughed. It was a sound so sudden and alive, it startled him. A burst of joy that belonged nowhere near his cabin. She slapped his beard with both hands, babbling. He froze, not sure what to do. Then Mabel joined in. Wobbling to his leg, she grabbed onto his pant leg and squealed with triumph. Lena didn't move. Just watched, hand pressed to her mouth. Her eyes glistened in the firelight. When Colt glanced up, she whispered, "You're the first man my children ever touched." The statement hung heavy, almost holy. "They never," he began. "My husband died before they were born. We buried him under the elder tree before the frost set in. They've only ever had me." He didn't reply. Just gathered Ruthie into one arm and let Mabel lean against his knee. His rough hand cradled the small of the baby's back like he'd held many things, shovels, ropes, hammers, but nothing quite like this. For once, silence wasn't absence. It was reverence. That night, Lena cooked with more salt than usual. The stew tasted like something from before, all pepper, onions, and softness. She let him pour the water for her. Let him pull the chair closer to the fire. And when she yawned, she leaned just slightly toward his side. "You don't have to," she said sleepily, "but if you ever wanted to hold them again." Colt didn't speak. But the next morning, he took Mabel from her arms without waiting. The days passed like this, snow outside, warmth within. The wind clawed at the windows, but the hearth stayed lit. Ruthie learned to stand by grabbing Colt's fingers. Mabel fell asleep on his chest once, drooling into his shirt, and he didn't move for an hour. Lena watched him change. Not in words. Colt Maddox still rarely spoke. But she saw the way his posture shifted, less braced, more grounded. How he walked slower when entering the room. How he no longer flinched when Ruthie tugged at his beard or when Lena's fingers brushed his at the wash basin. "You're not as rough as they say," she murmured once while mending a button on his shirt. "They still talk?" "They never stopped." "What's the latest?" "That you killed your brother. That you sleep on dirt. That you buried gold under the barn and guarded with ghosts." He didn't laugh. But his eyes crinkled. She liked that. The way he didn't need laughter to show warmth. Just the slow unfolding of something long frozen. That evening, Lena told him about her dreams. Sometimes I think about building a schoolroom. Just a little one. Wooden desks. A blackboard made of slate. Nothing fancy. Colt watched her as she spoke, hands moving gently over Ruthie's curls. I want them to know more than I did. To grow up in a place that doesn't measure them by who their father was or what cloth their dresses are made from. He leaned forward. I got wood. Plenty. She looked up. Smiled softly. Not today, she said. But maybe one day. The storm gave way that week. Not all at once, but in pieces. First the wind settled. Then the snow fell slower, like it was tired. Finally, one afternoon, the clouds opened just enough to show the blue behind them. Colt stepped outside. His boots sank, but not too deep. The hills rolled again, soft and white and curved like sleeping shoulders. The fence posts peeked out. The barn roof gleamed in the sun. He heard Lena's voice behind him. I almost forgot the sky was blue. He turned. She stood in the doorway, the twins on her hips, a faint flush in her cheeks from the fire's warmth. You want to try for the wagon? She asked, not quite meeting his eyes. He said nothing. Just walked past her and grabbed the shovel. Together, they cleared a path. It took hours. Lena worked until her arms trembled, and still she pushed forward, hair damp with sweat, breath fogging like smoke. He watched her. Watched her shoulders, narrow, tired, but unbowed. And as he tossed snow over the rail, he realized he didn't want her to leave. Not because of the quiet she softened. Not even because of the children. But because she'd seen him unspoken, unmended, and hadn't turned away. That evening, Lena stitched new soles onto her boots. She pulled the twins close and wrapped their feet in cloth. She cleaned the wagon seat and checked the reins. Prepared to go. She didn't ask if he wanted her to stay. And he didn't say she should. They simply sat by the fire one last time. Both babies asleep. The cabin warm. The night still. When she stood, brushing her hands on her skirt, she said, I think you're good, Colt Maddox. Even if they don't say it. His jaw worked a little. No words came. Then, as she turned away, he finally said, they ain't the ones here. She stopped. Turned. Looked at him. Then crossed the room and placed one hand on his chest, right where Mabel had slept. You're a better father than most who wear the name, she whispered. Even if it never gets said out loud. She left him standing there. The fire crackled. The twins stirred. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. Just waiting. The thaw began with wind, not warm, but stirring. The kind that loosened tree limbs and made the barn creak as if remembering old arguments. Drips formed along the porch rail. Icicles cracked free from the roof edge and shattered like tiny, failed promises. Colt didn't trust it. He moved through the yard with slower steps now, not from caution but from the weight of something unnamed growing behind his ribs. He'd started carving toys from spare wood, a horse for Ruthie, a rabbit for Mabel. He left them on the hearth and said nothing when the girls claimed them with squeals. Lena noticed. She noticed everything. Each morning she folded the blankets tighter. Brushed the lint from his coat. Let her hand rest on his arm a moment longer when passing. They were becoming something. Not declared. Not even discussed. But real, like roots under frost. Then came the hoofbeats. Mid-morning, when Colt was hauling buckets from the spring, the sound broke through the trees, 4 riders, 2 abreast. He knew them before he saw them. Knew the rhythm of briar fork boots, how they hit the ground with more swagger than need. He set the buckets down. Lena stepped onto the porch, twin girls balanced on each hip. Her eyes narrowed, not in fear but in knowing. They finally sent someone, she said. They never forget, Colt replied. Or forgive. The riders crested the hill. Snow spat from their horses' hooves. Leather creaked. Spurs jingled. These were not lawmen. These were the Hollow Boys, Jesse Flint, Ward Holloway, and the two Rigsby cousins. Men too proud for fields and too bitter for family. Men who never liked that Colt Maddox refused to shrink in their shadow. They stopped just shy of the fence. "Well, if it ain't the wild man," Jesse called, grinning. "And look what winter brought him. A preacher's whore with twins. How cozy." Lena's grip tightened on the girls, but her face didn't flinch. Colt walked forward, slow. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't reach for the axe leaning by the barn. He just stood there, arms loose at his side, and stared. Ward spat into the snow. "Heard she was living here. Thought we'd check on our neighbor. Make sure he hadn't started collecting widows for the spring thaw." Colt said, "Quiet, you got two choices. Turn your horses now, or try something stupid." Laughter followed. "Mean, sharp. What'll you do, Colt? Break our arms like you did poor Micah's? You think this land protects you? Think them brats make you a father now?" One of the Rigsbys nudged his horse closer. Colt didn't move. Didn't need to. The mule in the barn kicked once, echoing like a warning. Lena stepped forward then. Her voice calm, steady. "You came for a show. There won't be one. But if you push harder, you'll bleed on the snow, and not a soul will pity you for it." The silence after that wasn't empty. It brimmed. Jesse's grin faded. "Be careful, preacher's girl," he muttered. "Your kind's got a way of disappearing out here." Then they turned. One by one. Horses snorting. Hoofbeats retreating into the trees. Colt watched until the sound vanished. Lena let out a breath she'd held too long. He didn't speak. But when he walked up to her and reached for Ruthie, she handed the child over with trembling hands. Inside, he paced. Checked the locks. Boarded one window that shook too loose in the wind. Piled extra firewood in the corner. Lena tried to calm the girls. Her own hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night, they sat in silence. The fire low, but neither moved to stoke it. Colt rested his head against the back wall. Lena rocked the twins slowly. "I'll leave in the morning," she said. His eyes opened. "You won't," he answered. "I should. They're not going to stop. They think I'm yours now, and they hate that more than they ever hated me before." He stared at the flame. "That's not your weight to carry." "No, it's not. But it's mine anyway. It's what they put on women like me: bad choices, dead husbands, hungry mouths. I bring gossip wherever I go. You've lived quiet this long. Don't trade that peace for me." Colt's voice came like a shovel through frozen earth. "Peace ain't quiet. It's knowing the door's locked and the fire's lit and someone's singing a child to sleep." She looked at him. Long. The girl stirred in her lap. Mabel whimpered. Lena kissed the child's temple. Then whispered, "What if they come back?" He looked up at her, slow and sure. "Then let them try." She nodded. Didn't press further. But when she laid down that night, it was on the floor next to him, shoulder to shoulder. 2 blankets, 1 breath, no words. She didn't leave in the morning. The snow began to melt. Not fast, but steady. Runnels trickled from the roof. Earth peeked out beneath the white. The fence needed fixing. The barn doors sagged. Spring was coming. But with it, something else. Something that watched from the trees and waited for night. Colt cleaned his rifle. Sharpened the hatchet. Kept the lantern burning through till dawn. And every time Lena met his eyes, she saw the same promise in them. Not again. Not this time. He would not lose what little had begun to grow here. Not to men too small to know grace. Not to a town that forgot what mercy looked like. And not to fear. Because this time, he wasn't alone. The morning came with a stillness that felt wrong. No birdsong. No wind. Just that uncanny hush, like the world had stepped back to see what men might do. Colt stood in the doorway, rifle slung across his back, jaw set. His shirt clung damp to his chest from splitting kindling before sunup. A red slash of light crept over the hills, thin, early, blood-colored. Behind him, Lena packed what little they had, the twins' things, some dry meat, a jar of dried beans. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, but there was a tremble to her movements she didn't try to hide. "We can go," she whispered. "If we start by noon, we'll reach the old well road before night." Colt didn't answer. He watched the hilltop. "Colt," she said again. "Please. Don't give them what they came for." His voice came quiet. "They're already here." She looked out past him and saw it then, 3 riders on the ridge, more behind. Moving slow, deliberate, like hounds let loose. She stepped back, heart thudding. "We don't have to prove anything." He looked over his shoulder. Not at her. At the girls. Mabel was asleep in the cradle. Ruthie sat wide-eyed beside her, thumb in her mouth. "I ain't proving anything," he said. "I'm keeping it." Lena stared at him. Her lips parted like she might argue, but the words never came. Instead, she walked forward and placed her palm on his chest. He covered it with his own. Then turned, stepped onto the porch, and shut the door behind him. The riders reached the yard just as the sun cleared the horizon. Jesse Flint led them, as always. Mouth curled. Rifle loose in his hands. Ward beside him, chewing straw, eyes flicking from the barn to the house. "You think this place makes you a man?" Jesse called. "Think hiding behind a widow and 2 bastards makes you a father?" Colt didn't move. "You need to leave." Jesse laughed. "Oh, we'll leave. Once we take back what ain't yours." Colt said nothing. Just stepped down from the porch, slow and steady, hands empty. They weren't expecting that. He walked into the yard, the earth soft beneath his boots, mud showing beneath the snow. "I ain't raising a gun," he said. "But I'll bury the first man who crosses my fence." Ward snorted. "What fence?" Colt raised his chin. "The one you crossed in your heart before you ever rode up here." That hit something. Jesse's grin twisted. "You don't scare me, Maddox." "I don't need to." Then came the crack of movement. Ward spurred his horse forward, rifle rising. That's when the shot rang out. Not Colt's. Lena's. She stood in the doorway, rifle braced on the frame, shoulders square. Her face was pale, eyes wet, but her aim was sure. Ward's hat flew from his head. The bullet split the crown clean. "I won't miss again," she said. Silence fell like ash. The riders hesitated. Jesse cursed under his breath. And then, a second shot. This one from the trees. The Hollow Boys weren't alone. More had come, Rigsby's kin, maybe. Hired drifters. A dozen or more, rifles in hand, circling like coyotes. Colt grabbed the axe from the chopping stump and swung it into the ground beside him. His stance widened. "You came for blood," he said. "But I don't owe you mine." A shot struck the barn door. The mule screamed. Colt didn't flinch. Another shot. Lena ducked back inside. The twins wailed. Then, smoke. They'd set the far shed alight. Flames crackled through dry hay. The wind caught it, fanning the fire toward the cabin. Jesse yelled, "We'll burn you out. Let's see what's left when the ashes cool." Colt didn't answer. He moved. With sudden, terrible calm, he rushed Jesse's horse, grabbed the bridle, yanked him down in one motion. Jesse hit the earth with a grunt, rifle skidding. The others roared, but Colt was already swinging. The axe came down beside Jesse's head. Not killing. Just warning. Ward galloped toward him. Colt kicked the horse's shoulder mid-stride. The animal reared, tossing Ward into the mud. Then Colt turned toward the house, just in time to see a man crawl from the back, rifle raised toward the door. Colt shouted, but Lena had already seen him. She stepped out, fired. The man dropped. Smoke thickened. Fire roared. Jesse crawled through the mud, hand reaching for his rifle. Colt kicked it away. "You call this justice?" Jesse wheezed. "You think this'll make you one of us?" "I ain't one of you," Colt said. "That's the whole point." Behind him, the barn wall collapsed. The mule screamed again, then silence. Lena stepped beside him, Ruthie in one arm, Mabel pressed to her chest. Her cheeks streaked with ash, hair damp from sweat. "We have to go," she said. "No," Colt said. "We stay." She stared at him. He looked at her, not with defiance, but with resolve. "This ain't just my place. It's theirs now." Another shot rang out, this one in the air. The riders paused. Sheriff Amos Rigg had arrived. Alone. He sat tall in the saddle on the hilltop, face unreadable. "You boys done?" he called. "'Cause if you ain't, I'll start countin' bodies, and I ain't partial to names." Jesse froze. Ward stood up, bleeding from the lip. The riders scattered, silent, seething. The sheriff rode down slow, stopped at Colt's shoulder. "Hell of a morning," he said. Colt nodded. "She shot a man," Jesse spat. "Yeah," the sheriff said. "Good shot, too. You gonna press charges?" Jesse said nothing. The sheriff looked at Colt. "You want me to file this?" Colt looked to Lena. She shook her head once. "No," he said. "Let the cold take it." The sheriff tipped his hat. "Guess I'll be heading back." Then paused. "Colt." "Yeah? You ever think about rebuilding?" Colt looked down at the burned shed, the smoldering barn, the girls clinging to Lena. "I am," he said. That evening, the smoke settled. They didn't speak of it again, not the fight, not the fire, not the fear. Instead, they swept ash from the porch. They checked on the mule. They cleaned the girls, bathed in warm water, fed each other with shaking hands. Later, they lay beside the hearth, bodies touching in quiet comfort. Lena whispered, "What now?" Colt didn't answer. Just wrapped his arms around her, pulled the blanket over them both, and listened to the twins breathing. The world outside could wait. Inside, they had begun again. Maybe love doesn't always arrive clean and bright. Maybe it crawls out of fire and ash, wearing scars and silence. Maybe it doesn't ask for permission, just comes in, lays roots, and says, "Stay." And maybe the people worth loving are the ones who don't run when the cold returns. They build fire. And wait.